Hello, friends. You've stumbled across a short clip from the Daily Switch 2 podcast, which, believe it or not, is a podcast that is about the Switch 2 with new episodes released daily. What will they think of next? But first, we need to get into physical games in general. Are physical games dying? Because, again, that's something that many people are saying, and, some people who just analyze the video games industry as a whole would say, it doesn't matter, physical games are dying, that's just the future, man, get on board the hype train for the future, you will own nothing and you will be happy. But many Nintendo fans, especially, the vast majority of my comments at least, have been just absolute kickback, and it's not people who are angry, it's people who are distraught. Because Nintendo fans specifically care about physical games more than other fans, and we'll get on to why in a minute. But first, let's think about it from the perspective of other media. And I mention in basically every introduction that I work in the entertainment industry. Now, I've been programming games since the 80s, by the way, but just as a hobby to begin with. In the late 90s, I was in the music industry. Music industry was the first of the entertainment industries to go basically entirely digital. You had piracy, things like Napster and LimeWire, etc. And then Spotify obviously kind of made piracy in inverted commas legal. I know people will sit there and say, it's not piracy, I pay my subscription. Yeah, but if Spotify aren't paying the artists, you're still getting the music for free, right? Okay, technically you're not breaking the law, but you're getting the music for free. The artists aren't getting paid. But basically these services trained people to think of music as being free. And we saw for a while that CDs and cassettes and everything else stopped appearing in shops, in retailers. But vinyl sales are going up. And they've actually started appearing in stores again, as actually have CDs, at least for big artists with big fan bases. And even indie artists sell a lot of CDs at gigs. They hang around afterwards and sell CDs and sign them for people. I've been to a few independent gigs recently, and after every single one, there was people lining up to buy CDs and have them signed. Myself included, by the way. So I moved out of the music industry because there was literally no money to be made anymore unless you were like super famous and you could use the music to advertise yourself and then make money from selling hair care products and makeup or selling your wedding photos to magazines. That's basically how most artists make their money. So using the connections that I'd made in the music industry and my goodwill, I moved slowly through kind of music videos and animations and commercials into working in movie production, basically low budget films on DVD to begin with, and did very well for a while. But then the same thing happened. Internet speeds increased and people started pirating movies, just like they'd pirated songs and music, a few years before. And then again, just as Spotify kind of legalized piracy of music, Netflix basically legalized piracy of movies. And again, suddenly nobody bought DVDs anymore because you could pay a single subscription and you could get all your movies for free. So why would people buy movies on DVD? Nowadays, most people consume movies with streaming, and movies are seen as kind of more disposable. I heard Scott the Woz talking about this, and he said that people tend to get an emotional attachment to music, but not as many people get an emotional attachment to movies. I definitely do, but then it's my industry. And I can totally see that, how people will associate, a certain memory with a song, or they'll listen to a song over and over again, whereas even people who love movies might realistically only consume most movies once. So they're less likely to want to own a movie on DVD or Blu-ray. But streaming services have gotten worse. It was fine when it was just Netflix and it was a good price and a good service, but the service has got worse. The price has gone up, and it's not just Netflix anymore, is it? There's like 20 different streaming services or more. So people are slowly moving back to piracy, actually. but they're not really moving back to buying Blu-rays and DVDs, not the average person, sadly. Most stores have stopped selling Blu-ray and DVD, but there is a small but growing group of passionate movie fans that do collect them. Steelbooks, 4K Ultra, etc., especially if they collect a specific niche, like some people collect all the superhero movies, some people collect B-movie horrors, etc. And that's great for me because I produce a lot of B-movie horrors, and nowadays I produce some superhero movies as well. Sorry for those people who hate superhero movies and think there's too many of them. Hopefully the ones that I produce are a little bit different, but that's not to be said in this episode. Otherwise I will talk for even longer on a tangent that's not related. So that's movies and music. I suppose you could talk about how books have kind of gone digital, sort of, but I think a lot of people do like collecting physical books, myself included. I've got a ever-growing library, but less and less people are reading nowadays. They're just watching their TikToks and stuff. So yeah, books are a dying breed as well. But as far as video games go, physical video games, well, PC has basically been digital only since Steam took off, and also Epic Store and GOG and everything else. But basically the PC market is Steam, isn't it? And I do definitely miss physical PC games, especially the big box physical PC games. They were always really cool, weren't they? Like you got on DOS, and back in the day, the kind of personal computer games that came in the big boxes as well, like the Amiga or the Atari ST. There was something so cool about them, and often they'd come with like little tchotchkes inside the box as well. And that's something that I want to bring back, by the way, with my own games. My own games that I develop will have physical PC versions, both a standard version that's just on a DVD or a Blu-ray in a normal case, if you want to put that with the ones that will match, but also I want to put out some of those big box titles and fill it with all kinds of really cool stuff for people who do want that from a collectible standpoint. But that's only really going to appeal to people who were around in the 80s and 90s and remember them, and maybe collect them now, like people like Metal Jesus Rocks and stuff, you know, and Clint from LGR and stuff. There is a percentage of people who just really like those big boxes. Well, I want to bring that back, but it's never going to be a major market, is it? And also, I'm aware that many people who play games on a PC nowadays don't have an optical disc drive. They don't even have like a Blu-ray drive or anything on their PC or in their laptop. Yeah, with the collector's editions, I want to put out some nice kind of custom-shaped, cool flash drives for those that want them. So again, it's not just a code in a box. There will actually be a custom, cool little flash drive that you can plug into your USB, and it will have the game on there as well. Because again, I don't really like the idea of code in a box or key cards. If I'm charging money for something physical, I don't want it to actually have the game there. It really annoys me nowadays when, you know, big elaborate collector's editions of games don't actually come with the game. It's just so annoying. I remember when Sonic Mania came out, I was so hyped for Sonic Mania, and still, I mean, to me that is an incredible game, 10 out of 10, almost no notes. I just wish that Amy Rose was included in it. They added, you know, Ray and Mighty before they added Amy. That's a bit sus. I like Ray and Mighty, nothing against them, but why can't Amy play along? Getting into my fan bias there, but yeah, that was the first and possibly only collector's edition that I've ever bought which didn't actually come with the game. But that's at the time we thought there wasn't going to be a physical edition of the game. But thankfully we did eventually get a really nice physical edition of the game as well. So that's now sat happily on the shelf. But obviously Sonic Mania is a console game as well. But basically with those big box games, I'm talking about the PC and the PC being digital only. But even back in the retro days, there was a precedent for digital games. Like PC always had shareware, etc. Back in the day, like the most successful PC game of all time is arguably Doom, and that started off as shareware without a physical copy. And if you wanted a physical copy, it wasn't in the shops to begin with. You actually had to, you know, write a letter and send a check through the mail, and then Romero and Co. would send you back floppy disks. I actually talked on Reddit last year about my experience as a game developer in the 1980s and learning to code, my dad teaching me to code, and John Romero actually very kindly somehow he saw my post. I don't know how he saw my post, and he liked it, and he gave it an award, and he donated, and it was crazy. I was like, wow, okay. And then some of the other guys from id Software jumped on as well, and that was very overwhelming for me, because wow, what an inspiration Doom was and is to me as a developer. It's one of my favorite games of all time. But something about my story of learning to be a game dev in the 80s with my dad, and it touched him somehow, which is lovely. But nowadays, of course, the shareware back then, that was in a time when not everybody had an internet connection. Nowadays, it's just a given. If you have a laptop, a PC, a Steam Deck, an internet connectivity is a given. So basically, yeah, almost 100% of the PC market is digital and has been for a long time. But the appeal with consoles specifically, was always previously that they're just plug and play. Simple for kids, simple for parents. You don't have to worry about specs. You don't have to worry about installation. You don't have to worry about making boot disks and config sys and auto-exec bat. I'm showing my age now. Consoles. Think about like the NES, the Genesis, even the PS2. You put your game in, you press the power button, you play the game. That should be the way that consoles are. And for the majority of Nintendo Switch 1 games, that's how they are. Now, Xbox have been arguably trying to push for a digital-only, always-online future since that disastrous unveiling of the Xbox One. But after initially backtracking because they had to, there was outcry, their plan has basically come into fruition anyway by stealth. Game Pass, when it started, was such a good deal that now we're left with everything is an Xbox, in inverted commas, and it's very unlikely that we'll get another real console generation from Xbox, and if we do, it sure as heck ain't having a disk drive. Just like the 50% of PS5s where the digital-only version were cheaper, in inverted commas, while meaning you can't get reduced price games, you can't buy second-hand games, you can't buy things out the bargain bins in retail shops. So, okay, you saved yourself, what was it, $50? Maybe 100? I think it was 50. But your games are going to be more expensive, guaranteed now. And that was 50% of PS5s, but 100% of PS5 Pros. PS5 Pro doesn't even come with a disk drive. You can buy one separately in theory, but they're expensive and they are hard to come by, and they were released in a limited amount. And by the way, that disk drive requires an internet connection to install it, which renders it completely useless once the servers are no longer up. In my Switch 2 hardware review, I talked about the Switch Day 1 patch causing exactly the same problem, and how even comparatively new hardware that you can still find in certain retail stores selling brand new and sealed no longer work. Like the Oculus Go, which can't get past the safety videos when you boot it up for the first time, unless you get into downloading Android APKs and the like. Try and get the grandma to work out how to do that so that little Timmy can play on his new thing that she saw in the shop window and thought looked cool. This is the future that we live in, folks. Nothing lasts forever, but some things don't last as long as it takes for the shops to clear their stockroom. Hell, some supermarkets have Concord for PS5 on the shelves still because they didn't get the note that Sony took down the servers. What was it, like 2 weeks after release? It's nuts. Now, anecdotally, from the developers and publishers that I speak to, and from my experience, more PS4 physical copies than PS5, certainly for the kind of indie retro style games that I make. But there definitely are still physical collectors for the PS5. It barely exists on Xbox. Even their major console exclusives often don't get physical releases. Like Gears 5, like 5 years ago. Does Halo Infinite have a physical copy? Probably, but I've never seen one. And If it does exist, there'll be nothing on the disc, just a license to download it. Same with like Indiana Jones, although that's not even system exclusive, is it? And the fact that I'm struggling to think of more than 3 examples in the last 5 years should tell you all you need to know. Nintendo, though, was always the holdout. People still collect physical carts for NES, SNES, Game Boy, N64, and they still work to this day. We're all blowing in them, even though we know we aren't supposed to, because it does make them work. The Switch 1 kind of became the new Vita as far as small print runs for indie games. It became the vinyl collectors, the 4K Blu-ray Steelbook enthusiasts. And Nintendo is trying to kill that market. Why? Well, that was funny / sad / informative / stupid, wasn't it? Feel free to mentally redact to make that make sense with the clip that you just heard. I don't know what it was. I'm just recording a bumper. But if you enjoyed the clip, please give it a like. If you'd like to hear more, click subscribe, and you can find all the ways to listen to and support the full daily podcast at linktree/dailyswitch2. That's linktr.ee/dailyswitch2. Let's go! Did I sound like I mean that? I do. I really do.